our conference. As I promised, it's exactly 10:30. We're starting now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my co-program director, DG of the Northwest. I would like to greet our minister, the premier, the deputy minister, all the MECs, all the UN. We have so many UN permanent residents, UN women, UN, all those OECDs, UNODC, all the UN, all the World Bank attachments, because there's World Bank, there's Wi-Fi, there's all those, everyone who's here. Because of time, I can't go through the program and greet all of you. But in South Africa, in my language, we say, hoyo hoyo. Hoyo hoyo means welcome. We welcome you in our beautiful land. I think hoyo hoyo. Hoyo hoyo, not hoi hoi, hoyo hoyo. Hoyo hoyo. And also we say absheni. Absheni means good morning. A good morning to all of you, and we welcome you and we thank you for taking some time, coming from all over the world. We welcome the G20 members who are here, the technical committee members, working group chairs, everyone who's here. A very good morning. I would like to apologize, as my colleague has already apologized profusely. You try and make sure that everything is on point, but one little thing will definitely push you off the line. I kept telling Minister, she kept on saying, your program is too long, will you manage the time? I said, Minister, we have people, we've put people, we've done this, but unfortunately, I'm not in control of the state security for the registration. That's why we are here having delayed. We apologize. It will not happen again. From here onwards, we'll make sure that we keep the time. We'll buy back some of the time that we have lost. Without wasting time, I just want, this is a challenge to my minister, the premier, deputy minister, MECs, and everyone, but not only them, because this is the responsibility of government, private sector, and society at large. Experts say financial inclusion refers to ensuring that all individuals and businesses have access to and can use appropriate, affordable, and responsible financial products and services, including transactions, payments, savings, credit, and insurance. It's about empowering people to participate fully in the formal financial system, regardless of their background, gender, location. This is as simple as it is. So the challenge is, after this conference, then what? I think this is a challenge to us, that how does this change the life of a South African there in KZN, in deep rural, or in Limpopo, or here in Nauport, I'm correct. There's a place by Bita, Nauport, next to the Botswana border. I think I went there. I think it's Nauport or whatever. How does this change their life? Because I think it's not just about us meeting here and talking and eating, but is the outcome, not just of the G20 countries, but everyone who participate. So I think that is our challenge. And the challenge goes beyond our minister, premier, and the deputy minister and the MECs, but also to the G20 countries. How do we make sure that we ensure that our meeting annually impacts the lives of people? Thank you very much. Without wasting time, I would like to call His Excellency, Mr. Lazarus Mukhosi, who's the Premier of the Northwest Province. I think most of you know that you are in the Northwest Province. In South Africa, we have 9 provinces. This is the Northwest, so he is the Premier of the Northwest Province. Honorable Premier, thank you.
Power generation potential throughout the province. Destination Northwest has everything to entice all the senses, and suitably that of any traveler, with mountains, dams, game reserves with the Big Five, gaming, leisure, and heritage sites. Several tourism investment opportunities are available in reserves such as Borakalalo, Gaswane, Valkop, Bosalano, and others. Bloemhof Dam Nature Reserve, a waterfront multi-faculty development across accommodation, aquasports, activities, and conferencing. Project value is 1 billion rand, waiting for the right investor to take it to new heights. Borakalalo Nature Reserve in the Bojanala District Municipality lends opportunities for revitalized tented camps and traditional camping sites, water sport, and eco-adventure activities, investment valued at 100 million. Molemane Eye Nature Reserve, 40 kilometers outside of Mahikeng, offers the opportunities for tented accommodation, camping, day visitors, and conferencing at an estimated project value of 60 million. Volvisbrape Nature Reserve, situated adjacent to the Vaal River in the Dr. KK district, is a fisher's haven with opportunities that span accommodation and activities valued at 50 million rand. Gaswane Mountain Reserve, an urban eco-park in Rustenburg, Bojanala District Municipality, offers opportunities abound from eco-adventure trails, biking, conferencing, spa, and revitalized accommodation valued at 40 million rand. Malope Nature Reserve, this special game reserve bordering Botswana on the far western corner, and associated activities concession, game drives, accommodation, etc., valued at 40 million rand. With so many wonderful attractions and places of leisure, the Northwest Province not only affords you the best opportunities to create a legacy in the business realm, but also offers you a quality of life balance with nature's splendor and the best of our cultural and national heritage. With 2 airports currently only servicing chartered flights at Pilanesberg and Mahikeng, we invite interested investors who can revitalize and establish them as passenger airports. Mahikeng Airport, with the longest runway, has capabilities to serve as a cargo airport, transporting products to SADC and the rest of Africa. We invite you to partner with us as we step into the future. A province ready, a land waiting. Opportunities abound. Hashtag invest in Northwest.
No, thank you very much, Program Director. That is the Northwest. We invite you to hashtag invest in the Northwest. Our hands are open for investors and tourists. Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth, and Persons with Disability, Mayor Sindiswa Chikunga, the Deputy Minister, Mapaseka Steve Litike, members of the Northwest Executive Council present here today. I've seen MEC Pizza Lenkopane, MEC Kawake Molapisi, MEC Selolehare, MEC Kenetswe Mosenochi, members of the provincial legislature present here today, under the leadership of the Speaker, Me Sibonda Samasone Mohono. Also present, I've seen the Chief Whip of the House of the Northwest, Me Motalipula Khoso. Chair of Chairs of the Provincial Legislature, Me Tebogo Modise, Rale Lebog, Bagaitso gore re be le lekgono. All mayors present and councillors present here today. Chairperson of the Empowerment of Women Working Group, South Africa Advocate Mikateko Maluleke. The Executive Secretary of the Ministry of Women, Federative Republic of Brazil, Ms. Maria Helena Gurezi. Director General of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, Mr. Zain Dengo. The Vice Chancellor and Principal of Tshwane University of Technology, Professor Tinyako Maluleke. Leaders of delegations from G20 countries present here today, members of the House of the Traditional Leaders and Khoisan in the Northwest Province, members of the Diplomatic Corps present here today, members of the civil society, invited guests, all protocol observed. Bagaitso, good morning, Dumelang. Bagaitso Dumelang. Oh, Raleboch. On behalf of the provincial government of the Northwest, let me take this opportunity and extend a warm welcome to all our guests to the beautiful province of the Northwest, and in particular, the Sun City Resort, which is our prime tourist establishment located within the Pilanesberg National Park. I hope you have all added an itinerary in your program to take a game drive into our Pilanesberg National Park, a protected game reserve, which is over 550 square kilometers. I'm confident that you are going to have a progressive deliberations that will shape our ongoing efforts in creating economic opportunities for all, and in particular, our women. An inclusive economic growth remains one of the apex priorities of our government, and through it, we envisage a society that is prosperous and has placed women at the center of its developmental agenda. These policy imperatives is a culmination of many struggles endured by the women of South Africa and our beloved province. In 1957, the oppressed and impoverished women of Lehurutsi, not far from here, in our Kosi Ramotsiri Muilwa local municipality, tackled the bull by its horns when they led a campaign against past laws to raise their alarm on the injustices of apartheid and its draconian laws on women in less known areas in our communities. It is this act of bravery which contributed immensely in mass mobilization efforts such as demonstrations, marches, and boycotts across the country to achieve a political change and a guarantee women for their political, social, and economic rights. Program Director, as we meet here today, we are to engage on our continued efforts by G20 countries to strive for the economic inclusion of women in our developmental trajectory. We evoke the spirit of growth women like Sophia DeBrey, Helen Joseph, Amina Kachalia, Rebecca Kotani, Ruth Mumpati, and others who are our moral compass. to guide our course in the total emancipation of women from the shackles of economic exclusion, patriarchy, chauvinism, and poverty in our respective countries, particularly those emerging from colonial apartheid rule. Their relentless commitment to social justice, equality, democracy, and international solidarity, which spans over decades, incentivized the country's diplomatic endeavors in bringing to the fore challenges experienced by women in underdeveloped countries. It is their action as part of their solidarity work which laid bare the atrocities meted on women in conflict-ridden countries. During the Democratic Republic of Congo Peace Accord, which was signed in the corridors of the very same venue in 2002, following the Second Congo War, the exploitation and the use of sexual violence on women as a weapon was under a very heavy scrutiny in this venue. This, among others, prompted and culminated in the adoption of the 2005 African Union Charter on Women to promote equality, peace, freedom, dignity, justice, solidarity, and democracy for women. Through these negotiations, our province demonstrated to the world our capacity and commitment to contribute to peace and stability efforts and to live up to the AU resolution of eliminating all wars and conflicts by 2030. But critically, to advocate for the socio-economic rights of women across the continent and the developing world, particularly in countries grappling in conflicts, underdevelopment, human rights abuses, and inequalities. Gender equality represents both a fundamental human right and a significant economic opportunity. Enhancing women's participation in the labor market can lead to an increased labor input and improved productivity by better aligning skills with job requirements and making optimal use of the available female workforce. Furthermore, women's economic integration represents a unique opportunity to address the challenges posed by a shrinking workforce in many developed and emerging economic countries, which is linked to an aging population and declining fertility rates. Program Director, as a province, we fully commit and support and welcome the initiatives by the G20 on the empowerment of women and gender equality, as well as the promotion and participation and representation in leadership and governance. This includes policies covering employment, equity, entrepreneurship, addressing the pay gap, and prioritizing gender mainstreaming. Ladies and gentlemen, we have equally held a series of engagements in collaboration with institutions of higher learning, policymakers, and practitioners as precursor to this event to develop evidence-based policies that support the financial inclusion and asset ownership of women. This is of critical importance as we take stock of achievements and challenges of the past 30 years, particularly since the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action by the United Nations in 1995. Program Director, the empowerment of women, either in the form of employment or government procurement spending, is important if you are to cushion women from the scourge of unemployment, poverty, and inequalities, as well as gender-based violence and femicide pandemic. In the last financial year, 2.8 billion of the procurement expenditure benefited business owned by Black women, which is accounting for 42% of the total procurement of this province called the Northwest. This performance demonstrates an upward trajectory on our efforts to support women-owned businesses when compared to the previous financial year, where we could only account for 32% target as women enterprises. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe ka Setswana sa rona re re mosadi mooka o anya le mariga. In simple terms, we believe that mme kana mosadi it's a hustler. If anything, she does it for the children, including even this husband. Ano ke mafoko a ka yang gore itshulelo ya basadi e ntse nngwe ya dintlha phisegelo tse di botlhokwa tsa batsoga pele ba rona mo provinceng ya rona. Now, this Setswana program, centered on African epistemology, gives assurance and credence to the resourcefulness of women and their place in society as pioneers of change, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and humanists. This has taught many of us that where there is a woman, our nations and communities will never be in need. Let's retrace our roots and learn from the great practices of our forebearers, as well as astute African women leaders such as Professor Mokokong, Mantatisi, Mochachi, Ya Asatewa, and Zinga Mbande. Program Director, the women of the world will be watching with keen interest to see what becomes of the Sun City recommendations in November due to the growing trust deficit between ordinary people and the perceptions on forums like the G20. This is largely attributed to our failure to implement the good resolutions that we normally adopt. Our country offers a great opportunity to correct this. Let us not disappoint them, the masses of our people. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Re a leboga, mo premier. Now I will call our minister, but before she comes here, because she didn't see the video that others have seen, I know you might have seen it twice now, but it's nice. The video about South Africa, it will play a little bit as our minister is coming, that tells us who we are. Oh, somebody came to tell me, and our communications officer used to tell me, DG, before you say anything, introduce yourself. I stood here and spoke and I didn't introduce myself. Someone came from there and said, you didn't introduce yourself. They don't know who you are. So Amikate Komaluleke, I am the Director General in the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, the South African Chair of the Empowerment of Women Working Group. Thank you very much. Now, the minister, my apology, I forgot. I always forget and they remind me. Minister in the presidency for women, youth, and persons with disabilities, Minister Sindisiwe Chikunga.
This is who we are. More than 60 million different voices echoing in harmony from the southernmost part of the continent, where ordinary people have carved their names in an extraordinary history by showing the world that peace is always better than war. Our reach is not limited by our borders, bringing joy in people's hearts and a spark of rhythm to their moves. This is the welcome home of opportunity.
Thank you very much, Program Directors, Advocate Maluleke Joyce, who, as she has said, is the Director General of the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, and Mr. Paul Mukhutle, also the Director General in the Office of the Premier in this province, Northwest. Let me also acknowledge the presence of our Honorable Premier of Northwest Province, Mr. Lazarus Mukhutsi, our Deputy Minister in the Presidency, responsible for women, youth, and persons with disabilities, Ms. Steve Litsike. All executive leadership of the Northwest Province, members of the provincial legislature, traditional and religious leadership that is here with us, DG of DERCO, Mr. Zain Tango, who also is our South African Shepherd, Professor Tinyiko Maluleke, who is Vice Chancellor and Principal of the Tshwane University of Technology, distinguished representatives of the G20 Troika, distinguished delegates of the G20 member states, invited guest countries and international organizations and partners, chairperson of the Commission for Gender Equality in South Africa, our facilitators and panelists, heads of delegation, members of the diplomatic corps, distinguished guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. As it has been said, my name is Sindisiwe Chikunga. I serve as the Minister in the Presidency responsible for women, youth, and persons with disabilities. This morning, on behalf of our government and our President, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, I have the honor of extending our very warm and fraternal greetings to all our guests from far and near to this G20 conference on global innovative approaches and best practices on financial inclusion as a catalyst for women's economic empowerment. We are delighted to welcome all delegates to the beautiful Northwest Province and are eager to share with you our country's warm atmosphere, our people's exceptional hospitality, and our rich history of struggle and dedication to the empowerment of women. Our conference is taking place against the backdrop of our collective aspirations as reflected in critical global and regional frameworks, including the Sustainable Development Goals, the African Union Agenda 2063, South Africa's National Development Plan 2030, our 2025 G20 presidency priorities, as well as key priority 2 of the working group on the empowerment of women, that is promoting financial inclusion of and for women. All of these key documents foreground financial inclusion as a catalyst for women economic empowerment. Dear delegates, the significance of this conference cannot be overstated. 3 decades have passed since the historic Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action established a vision for women's economic empowerment. At that historic gathering in 1995, 185 governments acknowledged for the first time that women's economic participation was essential for global development and the future of humanity, with 1/3 of the framework's recommendations addressing economic issues. Our decision to elevate and shine the spotlight on financial inclusion as a priority theme during our chairship not only seeks to build on the remarkable legacies of Brazil and India, but also reaffirm the ongoing legacy of the women who came before us and their unrelenting emphasis on the need to achieve women's economic and financial autonomy as a necessary condition for lasting gender equality. 3 decades ago, women correctly observed that the considerable gender disparities in who gets to exert power over economic structures in societies were foundationally to persisting gender inequalities. They saw then what persists to this day, that in most parts of the world, women are virtually absent from structures where economic decisions are made and economic power is exercised. This includes structures where financial, monetary, commercial, and other economic policies are formulated. Noting this trend, the women correctly concluded that for it to be inclusive, development, including decisions on how the proceeds of economic activities are to be distributed, had to be women-led. The conditions that warranted advocacy for women-led development persist to this day. Despite decades of advocacy work, the gendered socioeconomic gap remains both untenable and unsustainable. Women and girls continue to shoulder the global burden of poverty, which in turn deprives them of accessing vital health services, education, and socioeconomic opportunities throughout their lives. As a result, women continue to be underrepresented in economic decision-making positions. They have limited access to credit and capital. They face discrimination in employment. They earn less, shoulder disproportionate unpaid care responsibilities, and lag behind in digital financial access. Even in areas where women's labor force participation has peaked, their work often takes the form of self-employment in the informal sector with no security and limited opportunities for growth. Here on the continent, parts of the global south and beyond, the majority of women are either unemployed, underemployed, or mostly vulnerably employed. The women who pursue entrepreneurship are often reduced to the informal sector with limited access to capital and other formal financial services. They are hindered by the lack of essential skills to effectively manage and sustain businesses and take advantage of available financial services, products, and other existing business opportunities. Only a handful of financial institutions understand the unique needs of women enough to provide them with relevant products and services that adequately respond to these needs. As we speak, only 15% of the SDGs are on track to be achieved by 2030. And about 37% of these targets have shown no progress, or even worse, have regressed below the 2015 baseline. Sustainable Development Goal 5, which aims to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls, is one of those goals that will not be met by 2030. Alongside escalating geopolitical tensions, ongoing debt pressures carry the potential to push millions more women into extreme poverty, particularly as debt servicing costs continue to divert resources away from education, health, and other public goods. More recently, we gathered in New York for the annual Commission on the Status of Women to commemorate 30 years since Beijing. The general feeling was that of hope and fear. Fear that the struggle for gender equality is facing a significant pushback from powerful corners. This fear was amply captured by the UN Secretary General during his moving opening remarks. He cautioned that, I quote, 3 decades on, the Beijing promise feels more distant than we might ever have imagined. Women's rights are under siege. The poison of patriarchy is back, and it is back with vengeance. slamming the brakes on action, tearing up progress, and mutating into new dangerous forms. But there is an antidote. That antidote is action. Now is the time for those of us who care about equality for women and girls to stand up and to speak out. Now is the time for the world to accelerate progress and deliver on the promise of Beijing, close quote. While acknowledging progress in reducing maternal mortality and expanding legal protections for women, the Secretary General lamented the persistence of economic inequality and discrimination. He further singled out the use of artificial intelligence and emerging technologies in ways that not only amplify gender abuse, but further widen socioeconomic disparities between women and men. Program directors, in this conference, we have therefore foregrounded the theme of financial inclusion as a pillar of a century-old clarion call, a call that for generations has carried with it a timeless message that says, placing the levers of economic power and control over the wealth-producing resources of any nation in the hands of women is neither a favor nor an act of charity. Instead, it should form part of our collective resolve to redress the past by ensuring that women receive equitable returns to their contributions to the daily functioning of their countries, their continents, and of course, our world. The evidence is clear and compelling. When women have equal access to financial resources, economies grow and humanity thrives. When women participate in an economic governance, policies become more responsive to diverse needs and more effective overall. Studies have consistently shown that increasing women's financial inclusion raises GDP, reduces poverty, and enhances business performance. We know, for example, from extensive UN data and reports that women spend a large portion of their income on their families compared to men, often investing around 90% of their earnings back into their households, while men invest around 30 to 40%. It therefore goes without saying that allowing a patriarchal consolidation of economic power away from women is antithetical and frankly contradictory to our global pursuit for a just, humane, and collectively prosperous society. Dear delegates, we have foregrounded the theme of financial inclusion because despite this knowledge and the evidence before us, as we gather as delegates to this conference for women and girls, the world outside is still a far cry from the one envisioned in Beijing 1995. As we gather to address their current fate and imagine their future economic prospects, millions of women worldwide still face a growing list of systemic barriers. The world over, for the majority of women out there, progress towards financial inclusion has been far from ideal and inadequate at best. Moreover, with the G20 taking place for the first time on the African continent, our theme of financial inclusion also draws direct inspiration from the African Union Agenda 2063 and the legacy of South Africa's chairship of the African Union, which coincided with the Decade of African Women. During our chairship of the AU, our president, His Excellency President Ramaphosa, stood out for championing women's financial and economic inclusion at the forefront of his program of action. Program directors, I wish to highlight 5 broad pillars of financial inclusion that I believe require our urgent attention. Firstly, at the level of economic decision-making and policy leadership, we must implement gender-responsive budgeting across all government departments, establish meaningful quotas for women in financial institutions and regulatory bodies, and create specialized economic advisory councils that amplify women's voices in all areas where the direction of our economies is determined. Secondly, ensure meaningful access to financial resources and capital formation, progressive fiscal reforms, and an overhaul of the global financial architecture are long overdue. According to the World Economic Forum, women entrepreneurs face a global financial gap estimated at 1.7 trillion US dollars. The research shows that traditional banking systems are failing women through collateral requirements that overlook women's limited property ownership, financial products that ignore women's business patterns, and gender bias in lending decisions. Without access to capital, women's entrepreneurial potential remains severely constrained. Addressing this domain requires specialized women's banking initiatives, scaled up credit programs with clear pathways to formal banking, gender responsive investment funds, and reforms to our property laws. Thirdly, this conference must address the issue of women access to land and related productive assets as key pillars of financial inclusion and the foundational inclusion of women and foundation of wealth creation, I mean. We contend that the economic and financial inclusion of women cannot be achieved alongside landlessness and unjust patterns of property ownership. We therefore hope that this conference will also serve as a foundational platform for addressing the enduring social, legal, and customary barriers that continue to hinder women's ownership of land, capital, credit, technology, and other means of production. Fourth, we should also emerge from this conference having exchanged ideas of how to remove trade barriers that disproportionately affect women and ensure fair representation in cross-border trade policies. For example, how do we position women at the forefront of beneficiation and beneficiating the projected surge in minerals critical to energy transitions and their related value chains? Our region, Southern Africa, is central to the global energy transition. From electric vehicles to solar panels and future generations, the shift to clean energy is set to minerals. We expect scholars and practitioners to present concrete measures to ensure that women-owned businesses are at the forefront of value chain across these industries. We need tangible ideas and actionable strategies, for example, on how we can leverage the AfCFTA to attract both public and private investment into domestic processing, beneficiation, and commercialization capabilities so we can move beyond the setbacks of economies dependent on basic extraction. Lastly, another domain that requires our urgent attention is leveraging preferential public procurement at various levels of government to achieve sustainable financial inclusions and inclusion outcomes. This should include setting mandatory quotas for contracts awarded to women-owned businesses with specific attention to marginalized women entrepreneurs. And here in South Africa, we have put the quota at 40% for women-owned businesses. As recently as July 2024, President Ramaphosa signed the Public Procurement Act legislation that will regulate public procurement, including preferential procurement by all organs of state. We welcome the President's decisive intervention in this regard. The Public Procurement Act represents a comprehensive overhaul of South Africa's procurement landscape. It consolidates existing laws, strengthens governance through a central public procurement office. It promotes socio-economic transformation through a structured preferential procurement frameworks. It enhances transparency and combats corruption through measures such as mandatory disclosure and the use of technology, and it provides a dedicated dispute resolution mechanism. For these efforts to succeed, it is essential to invest in modernizing the capacity of women-owned businesses so that they can produce, supply, and distribute high-quality goods and services equipped with the latest manufacturing technologies as well as productive tools. We must also develop gender-responsive fintech solutions and digital banking platforms that address literacy barriers, incorporating design features tailored to the needs of women in rural and farming communities. Our department is currently working with the prudential authorities to introduce a cooperative bank in order to address gaps in the system that continue to leave women behind. Finally, we must be able to track progress in real time in order to intervene when necessary. To this end, during our 2025 Women's Economic Assembly, we launched the Presidential Index for Gender Inclusive Supply Chains. This data-driven tool is designed to track, to measure, and to evaluate procurement transformation across industries, providing a clear mechanism for assessing real impact and ensuring that women-owned businesses are fully integrated into South Africa's economic landscape. Program Director, as we deliberate in the coming days, let us be reminded of the words of the UN Secretary General, who amply observed. He said, "We are sometimes told a rising tide of economic growth lifts all boats. But in reality, rising inequality sinks all boats." Let us emerge from this conference with a clear roadmap, concrete measures, and realistic timelines for placing women's current and future financial well-being at the center of our work. If we don't do this, this will be another talk show. Let us be bold in our ambitions and unwavering in our commitment to ensuring that the financial system of tomorrow works for all, not just a few. Once again, thank you very much, and I very much look forward to our engagement, and I thank you.
Thank you. What I like is that this is on TV. Everyone has heard, everyone knows their responsibility. You outlined 5 things that we need to do as a starting point to ensure that we include women, all women, young women, women with disabilities, every woman, women in their diversity. Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you. We are trying to catch time. So without waste, I will call my brother. Is my brother. Professor Tinyiko Maluleke is the Vice Chancellor and Principal of Tshwane University of Technology, Republic of South Africa. They are our partners. Remember, I said that Mikateko Maluleke is Tinyiko Maluleke.
I am afraid of nepotism. Minister Chikunga, Your Excellencies, Royal Highnesses, other honorable ministers from other countries, ambassadors, academics, representatives of the G20, global development organizations, civil society, businesses, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you warm greetings from the Tshwane University of Technology, a 21-year-old South African university serving more than 60,000 students with great impact. What an honor it is for the Tshwane University of Technology to partner with the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability, as well as the Empowerment of Women Working Group of the G20 in this very important conference focused on the pertinent subject of financial inclusion and women empowerment. Few developmental imperatives are as timely and as urgent as financial inclusion and the empowerment of women. These imperatives are at once national, regional, and international. For this reason, this conference should probe the two notions of financial inclusion and women empowerment holistically, contextually, and hopefully also critically. There would be no need to talk about financial inclusion of women if the financial exclusion of women was not so persistent, so pernicious, and so ubiquitous. If financial inclusion is the thesis, then financial exclusion is the antithesis. For this reason alone, we must strive for a deep understanding of the many ways and the many means through which women are financially excluded in this and in every other country, directly, indirectly, overtly, or covertly. We must consider the various strategies, the various techniques and tactics which are used in this country and across our continent to keep women outside the centers and the levers of the economy. Unless we do this, we will not be able to solve the problem. In the process of doing this, we must not miss the financial exclusion divide and rule tactics used to sustain the financial exclusion of women. Such tactics include nationality, race, class, and gender. And yet, what the vast majority of women have in common, whether they belong to the LGBT plus or they are straight, whether they are African, European, Asian, North American, or South American, what they have in common is that they all have to deal with a myriad of hurdles designed to financially exclude them and to make it harder for them to access various financial products. But financial inclusion goes way beyond access to that suite of financial instruments, most of which were ironically built, among other things, for the exclusion of women. Whereas the financial inclusion of women is a noble objective to be pursued without any hesitation, the mere inclusion of women into an unjust economic system and its instruments will never be enough. There is lots of both micro and macro transformation work to be done to the prevailing financial instruments. It is not good enough to include a few women into a system originally designed to exclude them, but also system which is also built to fail women. The assumption that there is nothing untoward about the global, regional, and national financial set of instruments could be very wrong. Similarly, it is a precarious assumption to think that financial inclusion in and of itself will automatically lead to the transformation of a system that was built to exclude women. To suggest that once admitted into the system, women will or must take leadership of the transformation of financial institutions is tantamount to asking women to come and solve a problem designed by men intended to exclude women. Financial inclusion has potential to become a catalyst for women entrepreneurship, as we've already had. But when girl children are prevented from going to school, trafficked away, or married off to men old enough to be their grandparents, they are being groomed for abuse and for financial exclusion, as well as a lifetime of poverty. It doesn't take rocket science to surmise or realize that of the world's 1.4 billion adults without financial bank accounts, the majority are women, and probably women from the global south. Nor is it too difficult to see how financial inclusion is a catalyst for the achievement of many of the Sustainable Development Goals. The one SDG in which South Africa tends to think it has done very well is SDG 5, at least in terms of the number of women in parliament. On the other hand, we also happen to be the country of much gender-based violence and femicide. The most pernicious methods of financial exclusion are not themselves, at least on the face of it, financial at all. Sexual harassment, trafficking, rape, and femicide are some of the most brutal and dastardly methods of ultimate financial exclusion. The exclusion of women from education and jobs is similarly a roadblock to the financial inclusion of women. Study after study has shown that women continue to be excluded from jobs even if they have acquired the skills and relevant educational qualifications. Now, that is one of the root causes of financial exclusion. What about women empowerment? As I conclude, the very idea that economic systems, cultures, and political regimes which have systematically been constructed to disempower women will or can voluntarily transform themselves into women empowerment think tanks is not entirely rational. Indeed, the very notion of women empowerment, when uttered in haughty tones by males and male-orientated organizations, come across as condescending. I will not go so far as to suggest that only women can empower themselves, because that also is not true. But what I do know is that there will be no women empowerment without the leadership of women. We, especially men, and I count myself among them, must disabuse ourselves of the idea that we have the goodwill or the wherewithal to empower women. We must disabuse ourselves of the idea that once we have empowered women, they will or ought to be forever thankful for us. The idea of empowering women when it comes from the mouths of men is a little distasteful. Empowerment is not something patriarchy does to or for women. It never has done that. And so here we are, 30 years since the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. Here we are, 31 years since South Africa became a democracy. Here we are, 12 years since Mandela followed his ancestors, 3 years since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, 107 days since Donald Trump was inaugurated as USA president for the second time. Oh, well, yes. In more ways than one, our world is in crisis. It is a crisis we cannot allow to go to waste. The worst thing, one of the worst things we can do is to use the current crisis in our world, whether we're talking about the wars in Europe or the Israeli-Palestinian war, or what is the ongoing trade wars that the president of the US is none of these can or must be used to postpone women's financial inclusion as well as their empowerment. We can't say we can't do this now, we're just waiting for that and that to be resolved. DG, on behalf of the Tshwane University of Technology, I want to say how proud we are to be associated with this conference and to be working with the department and the Women's Working Group. I wish you a noisy, a robust conversation about financial inclusion and women's empowerment. I particularly wish it to be critical. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. And maybe I should also at this stage apologize for the late starting of our sign language interpreters. It's the same problem that beset us this morning. They were delayed at the accreditation site. They could not advance them in the queue, and that is why they are late. I would want to give you this opportunity of making a request of those that requires interpretation services to raise their hand so that it is important to know where they are so that they can interpret from an advantage position, knowing where they are seated. This is the request that they have made. Secondly, I'm sure you are looking at the hand. There is a hand on my right. Do you see it? Yes. You saw it? Yes. So you have an idea where they are sitting. Thank you very much. Secondly, we did not acknowledge our executive mayors, both for the districts and the local municipalities. We were informed that they will not be with us at once, but at certain intervals, some of them will be joining us. So we acknowledge them, even if they are not present, all of them here. But thirdly, we forgot also to announce to the delegates that we have about 15 women SMMEs from the Northwest Province who are displaying their businesses in the stalls behind the conference venue. So we kindly request delegates to interact with those women-owned SMMEs about financial inclusivity. As we conduct breaks in between, it will be very nice, colleague Maluleke, if at the end of this conference, the G20 in the Northwest, we could be told that one international or continental organization has partnered with one of these SMMEs regarding the very subject matter of this conference. It will be quite a legacy for the Northwest Province about the G20 for women. Thank you very much. We're now proceeding delegates to Zain Dango is not available. We are told he's overseas and he could not arrange a representative. That is the department that is responsible, or the custodian or engine of all the G20 working groups in the country, but nevertheless will proceed. It was supposed to be remarks by the G20 Troika, but we have not received representatives from the United States of America, so it's no longer a Troika. DG, I'm not sure, maybe it's now a double. We'll call it a double for purpose of today because the third leg is not in here. But we will start with a presentation from Advocate Mikateko Maluleke, who's the chairperson of this same working group. Thank you very much. Okay. She advises me that the Brazilian counterpart, Ms. Maria Helene Guarezi, should also join her on stage. Thank you. Over to you.
Good morning again. Now I'm standing here as the chairperson of the working group on the empowerment of women, youth, and persons with disabilities. Allow me to walk on the protocol that has been established in order to save time, but all those people that we have not mentioned earlier, they will be mentioned as the program proceed, the AU, the African Bank, and the others. However, may I stand on the program that has been established. It is both an honor and a privilege to welcome you to this transformative and timely global financial inclusion conference. On behalf of the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities and the Government of South Africa, I welcome you all. I extend my deepest gratitude to all of you, our partners and thought leaders who have gathered here today to reaffirm and reignite our shared commitment to advancing economic justice and inclusive growth for women and marginalized communities globally. Program Director, allow me at the outset to thank India for its leadership in 2023 in driving the adoption of the G20 leaders of the recommendation for the establishment of the working group for women's empowerment at their G20 Leaders Summit in New Delhi. Let me also thank Brazil for successfully establishing the working group under its presidency in 2024 and for giving direction on the focus areas related to women's empowerment and gender equality. These are indeed two laudable milestones of the G20 community. Allow me to therefore, as the current presidency of the G20, welcome all of our G20 member countries, including the European Union and the African Union, our invited guest countries, all our international organizations and partners, as well as our national knowledge partners, and wish all of them a very happy stay in South Africa. Financial inclusion of and for women is one of 3 priorities we have put forward as part of the focus of the G20 Working Group for Women's Empowerment under the South African presidency, under the broad theme of solidarity, equality, sustainability. This conference therefore allows a deep dive into the thematic focus of financial inclusion as we move toward policy directive and tangible outcomes of technical meetings of the working group. We are indeed convened at a critical juncture in our collective journey, a point in time where the need for tangible, sustainable, and inclusive economic reform is undeniable. The theme of this conference is centered on global and regional commitments to women's economic empowerment and financial inclusion, which is the only agent, which is not only agent, but also essential. It echoes the imperative that economic equity is not a matter of charity, but one of justice, human rights, and development. If we are to build resilient economies and cohesive societies, then the full, equal, and meaningful participation of women in financial ecosystems is non-negotiable. Across the globe, systemic barriers continue to constrain women's access to financial services and resources. Despite their entrepreneurial spirit and innovation, millions of women remain unbanked or underserved by formal financial institutions. These challenges are even more acute for women in rural areas, for young women who face structural unemployment, and for women and girls with disabilities who are often rendered invisible by exclusionary policies and practices. In South Africa, as in many parts of the world, we recognize that financial exclusion perpetuates cycles of poverty, dependency, and inequality. This is why we, as government, in collaboration with our partners, have made deliberate efforts to address these structural barriers through a multi-sectoral approach. Our policy frameworks, from the gender responsive budgeting, Minister referred to that earlier on, where she said everyone must implement the gender responsive budgeting initiatives, to the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, are anchored in the vision of a society where the economic rights of all are protected and promoted. However, policy alone is not enough. What we need is systemic transformation, and this transformation must be driven by a commitment to equity, innovation, and inclusion. We need financial systems that are designed with and for women. We need products, services, and technologies that recognize and respond to the lived realities of those at the margins. We need inclusive data and gender disaggregated indicators that inform decision making and track progress meaningfully. And most importantly, we need collaboration across borders, sectors, and ideologies to drive this agenda forward. This conference presents us with a powerful opportunity to do just that. It is a convening of minds, resources, and willpower to chart a course for a more inclusive global financial architecture, an architecture that does not merely integrate women and marginalized groups as passive participants, but centers them as architects of their own economies' destinies. Our agenda over the 2 days is ambitious, and rightly so. We will delve into critical themes, including access to credit, digital financial inclusion, inclusive entrepreneurship, regulatory frameworks, impact investment, and social financing. We will hear from trailblazers and pioneers whose lived experience and insights will challenge us to think beyond the traditional paradigm of financial growth. And we will explore practical, scalable, and context-specific solutions that empower rather than exclude, that liberate rather than constrain. As one of the 3 Troika members, it has already been indicated that it's the Troika. We're still a Troika. Brazil hosted the G20 empowerment of women working group last year. South Africa is hosting this year. The US will be hosting next year. That's why we are the Troika. We received and we're handing over to the others. As one of the 3 Troika members, we are committed to supporting outcomes that are not only aspirational, but actionable. We want to see the emergence of inclusive financing models that uplift community-based enterprises and social entrepreneurs. We want to see regional investment frameworks that are responsive to gender and disability dynamics. And we want to ensure that young people are not only recipients of development, but drivers of innovation and economic transformation. The vision cannot be realized without leadership, accountability, and bold partnerships. It is for this reason that we welcome the presence of all of you at this conference. We are equally encouraged by your participation as business leaders, development banks, international organizations, G20 member states, women-owned enterprises, and civil society organizations who have demonstrated that inclusive finance is not only good economics, but good governance. Let us remember that financial inclusion is not a siloed issue. It is inextricably linked to broader development priorities from education and healthcare to climate resilience and food security. Therefore, our interventions must be holistic, intersectoral, and inclusive. We must be intentional in our efforts to dismantle the barriers of patriarchy, discrimination, and economic marginalization that continue to exclude so many from opportunity and prosperity. In closing, I would like to reaffirm South Africa's commitment towards ensuring that financial systems are more just, inclusive, and equitable. Let us use this conference not only as a space for dialogue, but as a catalyst for action. Let it be the start of deepening of shared movement that reimagines financial inclusion, not as technical exercise, but as political, economic, and moral imperative. Together, let us reshape financial future. I thank you.
Bom dia.
Good morning. Good morning.
Em nome do presidente Lula e da ministra Márcia Lopes,
On behalf of President Lula and Minister Marcia Lopes,
cumprimento a ministra Sindisiwe Chikunga
I greet Minister Sintsui Shikunga
e nossa chair,
and our chair,
desculpe se eu não
Sorry.
acerto, Mikateto
Fine.
Maluleke,
I'm sorry if I mispronounce, Mitakeko Maluleke.
e em nome delas, eu cumprimento todas as delegações aqui presentes e todas as autoridades.
And I greet all delegations present here and all other authorities.
Eu, colaborando com todas as falas que me antecederam,
Corroborating all speeches that antecede my speech,
inicio dizendo da importância desse tema sobre o empoderamento das mulheres a partir da autonomia econômica.
I reiterate the importance of this topic, financial inclusion with the economic autonomy of women.
É bom lembrar que hoje o mercado é globalizado e precisamos pensar estratégias em nível global.
Today, markets are globalized, and we need to think about strategies that are also global.
E colocar as mulheres no contexto dos mercados internos,
And put women in the context of internal markets,
das compras públicas,
context of public procurement,
mas também nas transações comerciais internacionais.
but also in international trade.
Ressalvo a necessidade da representatividade das mulheres nas decisões sobre a economia.
We need to have the participation of women in decision-making in the economic sector.
Pois nós, mulheres, temos soluções para economias mais sustentáveis e justas.
Because we women, we have solutions for more equitable economies. and
No-
just economies.
Perdão. Nós, mulheres, precisamos de autonomia econômica, mas, acima de tudo, a economia precisa das mulheres.
We women, we need economic autonomy, but above all, the economy needs women.
Inserir as mulheres na economia, facilitando acessos a crédito e fomento,
So including women in the economy and facilitating to them access to investments,
criando ações afirmativas fiscais para mulheres
creating fiscal affirmative actions,
é investir estrategicamente na economia dos nossos países e na economia global.
this all means investing in our national economies and in the global economy.
As 20 maiores economias do mundo aqui reunidas se alinham para melhorar sua performance econômica, sua sustentabilidade na busca da garantia de justiça social.
So all the 20 greatest economies in the world gathered today here, they align themselves in the search for
Para buscar garantia de justiça social
to search for sustainability and social justice,
ao criar condições para que as mulheres possam,
creating conditions that women can also,
esperamos que brevemente,
we hope that in the near future,
estar em iguais condições que os homens.
be in equal conditions as men.
Mais uma vez, estamos aqui debatendo um tema tão importante para a sociedade e para a economia dos nossos países.
We are once more here gathered to discuss an important topic for our societies and for global economy.
Ano passado, na primeira edição do nosso GT de Empoderamento das Mulheres, discutimos no seminário o tema de cuidados.
Last year, in the first year of the work of this working group, we discussed in a seminar the topic of the care economy,
Que é uma pauta que dialoga fortemente com o empoderamento e o empreendedorismo das mulheres.
This is a topic that dialogues strongly with economic empowerment and entrepreneurship for women.
O Grupo de Empoderamento das Mulheres reforça suas pautas com a transversalidade em outras áreas da gestão pública.
The Empowerment of Women Working Group mainstreams gender and reinforces its dialogue with other areas of the public discussion.
E é imprescindível para esse tema do nome do seminário continuar a articulação com a trilha de finanças.
And it is very important that we continue with the articulation, the dialogue with the finance track, with the G20, also in this topic that we're discussing today and tomorrow.
Uma economia justa exige a participação igualitária de homens e mulheres.
A just economy demands equal participation from men and women.
Em todo o seu processo, desde a formulação de políticas econômicas,
In all its processes, beginning from the development of economic policies,
até a avaliação do impacto dessas políticas nas mulheres e meninas.
and also assessing impact of these policies on the lives of women and girls.
Como disse a nossa chair hoje aqui, é sobre empoderar mulheres.
So just recalling what our chair said earlier today, this is about empowering women.
Mas eu acrescento também que que nossos governos precisam tomar decisões políticas
But I add, our governments need to make political decisions
para incluir as mulheres nas economias,
to include women in our economies,
porque nós mulheres temos saberes,
because we women, we have our knowledge
que podemos tornar nossos países
and we can make our countries
mais solidários, equânimes e sustentáveis economicamente.
more solidarity, more equal
E sustentável.
and sustainable.
Aproveitemos a oportunidade que esse seminário pode nos trazer.
Let's take the opportunity that this conference bring to us and profit from it.
Queremos as mulheres em iguais condições que os homens na economia e nas decisões.
We want women in equal conditions with men in the economy, in decision making.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Guarezi and Advocate Maluleke. We are now going to messages of support. We hope we will recover in time with this item. My little experience tells me the message of support at most is 3 minutes. I hope the upcoming speakers will prove me right. At the most, they should be 5 minutes or so. We're going to get messages of support for the G20 Women Working Group from Dr. Cindy Mzamo and Ms. Florence Musundwa. I would call both of them. They should come at the same time. The other should follow the other one immediately after completion. I hope all of them are here. All right, there they come.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I'll arise on existing protocols, but I'd like to acknowledge my mother, the Minister, Umama Usindisiwe Chikunga, and the Premier of the province, Ndate Lazarus Makhoshi, and all diplomatic corps that are here, and thank you very much. I think ours is very simple and straightforward, Mama, because as W20, we're an engagement working group that actually working with G20, focusing with women on academia and private sector and also civil society. And our message is very clear and simple. On behalf of Professor Nanya Bula, who is our chairperson, and the co-chair, who is Bulele Poswayo, and my co-chair from Brazil, Madam, I'm the head of delegation, my dearest sister. I'm actually the chair of financial inclusion and entrepreneurship, and I chair it with my dearest sister from Brazil, Adriana Cavallo. And thank you very much. Financial inclusion is one of the most important systems in the world when you're talking about women empowerment. And there's nothing that women can do if they don't have access to finance, if they don't have access to markets. But at the same time, policies are very important, Mama, because we need to actually look at policies, the framework of those policies. The acceleration is very important. How do we accelerate women through policy formulations where we actually see that women are not mainstreamed in terms of financial inclusion? The worst one is women in grassroots. Access to finance in rural areas and townships. This is what we are standing for as W20. We want to see women coming on board. We want to see women on grassroots getting finance to finance those small projects on the ground. But also it's very important to strengthen that capacity, because at the end of the day, if you're not hand-holding anybody, no one will be able to actually uplift you. And the other one that is very important for us is legacy projects. What is G20 going to leave for Northwest Province, for other provinces in South Africa? We need to actually make sure that we drive that narrative of legacy projects. And one of them is to actually look at centers of excellences where women can come in a hub and be able to be trained and be able to actually access information and actually make sure that we work together. But the most important thing, we always say that in W20, collaboration is the new competition. Collaboration is the new monetary value. And collaboration enables innovation. We can't do this alone with women. Government is very important. And hence we are here to support the women working group as women in all the G20 countries to say we support the South Africa presidency in the mandate that the solidarity for women. What can we do for women, and where do we go from here? And also the Women's Innovation Fund. And I think it's very important. And I think South Africa has done very well, DG. And thank you very much, DG. I didn't acknowledge you. She has trained me. and also looking at the women's cooperative. And I think it's a very good model that can be used in any other member state. I'm sitting next to my dearest sister there from the African Union. In my other work, I work very closely with the African Union, my dearest sister, Madame Ngwenya. At the African Union, there's something called, Women Youth Financial and Economic Inclusion Initiative, which is championed by the President of Ghana. And this initiative, it wants to unlock $100 billion. And also it's targeting 10 million women by 2030. And these are critical initiatives that we need to actually look into because African Union is one of our anchors and partners to the G20. So with those words, the programs that we're actually looking at and working very tirelessly with the co-chair, we are saying financial literacy and financial and capacity building is very, very important. Intersectional barriers, Mama. I mean, you can't do anything if you don't have data. You can't do anything if you don't have technology. Women in rural areas, they're always left behind because they don't have the right information or they don't have the right tools or skills that they must use to be advanced technologically. I think for me, if you look at what the World Economic Forum is saying, 134 years for us to achieve gender equality. I think with what we are doing here today, we can be able to actually fast track that and we stop the 134 years because we can come together and make sure that that 134 years, it takes us 5 years. With the system that we're creating, with the play sessions that we're going to have today, that will actually drive the agenda of women economic empowerment through financial inclusion. I mean, in South Africa, we've got amazing women. I mean, if you look at what Mama Zanele Mbeki has done, Mama, I mean, if you look at the WTB Trust, women that were borrowed 800 rands, and those women today, they are thriving in their small little gardens. It's possible. What is needed is the support that we can actually ignite in these women and support them so that they'll be able to be better women, that they can take themselves, they take their families, take care of their families and take care of their communities and the nations. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I am Florence Musundwa. If I may use 1 minute of my 3 minutes. Ke tlo kopa le di dietse hle. I need it a bit louder. I am not convinced we are in Africa. Another last round of it. She's my girl. She's even standing. So let's stand up and Kikupa Lididiet is standing up. Shate! Shate! Welcome to Africa. They're using 30 seconds of mine. Come, let's join them. I have started a new conference. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's how we do it, and welcome to Africa. Africa, your time is now. If you are not South African or if you're not African, that's how we celebrate the sound that we're making. It's really a showcase of our celebration and who we are. We are people of music. We are people of sound. We have people of good hearts and big hearts, and we have people of deep culture. Like I mentioned, I am Florence Msundu, and I have really the pleasures of being the co-chair of the G20 Empower. And let me first say, standing on existing protocol, please give me a round of applause. I got that one right. I was a bit nervous. The G20 Empower Alliance has been in existence as an engagement group for the past 5 years. As Florence, I've had the pleasures of being the South African representative from the private sector. And we launched last week. And the G20 Empower, it's really between business and government. That's what we facilitate. We facilitate women economic representation in the private sector. Our theme is Uhuru. How many of you know what Uhuru means? It's a Swahili word meaning freedom. It's Uhuru, woman building sustainable income and financial independence. Hallelujah. And it speaks very directly to financial inclusion. Our priorities as women leadership, we want to see most G20 countries and also the African countries that are invited to hit the 35% mark of women leadership on boards. Women entrepreneurship for us is very, very key. I have to mention, and because I need to brag, 2 of the SMMEs, Rambade Waste and Blue Transfusion, are SMEs that I work with and I profile. So our team is made up not only of women that talk, but women that really are making a difference in their community. We're looking into beyond public procurement opportunities, but private sector opportunities. It's one key focus of ours because there's not a lot of data even around that. Then lastly, we will be looking into the STEM sector, STEAM rather, because we added the arts, and we will be looking into the commercialization of research and making it so that most doctors and master's graduates can literally commercialize their research into entrepreneurial ventures. Lastly, as I've been asked to come and give a message of support to our minister, to her team, we are here to amplify the work. That's what we are here for. We are, as you know, I'm a call away. We are here to make sure that the priorities, the recommendations, the declaration reverberates also in the private sector. We are your foot soldier. And also from my colleague from the Women 20, yes, we say collaboration is the new innovation, but let's make it practical. It will be really a miss of us if we as South Africans do not make the most of the audience that we have from G20 countries. Over and above that, if you are also from an African state, an African country, we are here to make sure that you are represented in our deliverables. Every engagement group has a report. Every engagement group has to put together a communique. And we are saying, here we are, let's make sure that the story of Africa to the world is represented correctly. So if you want to know more, make sure that you get into the website. But we are here, collective engagement. We will amplify the work of the Economic Working Group. And let's make sure that it's not only in the public sector, but it reverberates also in the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the 2 speakers have just proven that my experience is limited. A message of support cannot be 3 minutes. 5 minutes maybe, but not 3 minutes, certainly. But thank you very much for your messages of support. We come into the last speaker now for this session. by Ms. Prudence Ngwenya, as I call her, to come to the stage. She's the director in the AU Women, Gender Development and Youth Directorate. She will be sharing with us the midterm progress report on the AU 10-year African Women's Decade on Financial and Economic Inclusion. Ms. Prudence Ngwenya, is she with us? Oh, there she comes. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I'm here representing both women and young people. And this is why I'd really like to check the room if indeed we are still awake, because us as young people, we like to make sure that the room is alive. But first of all, can I see the young people in the room? Anybody who's below the ages of 35? Young people, are we here this morning? Young people, sikhona namuhla here. Say, yeah. Thank you very much. Indeed, the young people are here. I feel I can speak now. As already introduced, my name is Prudence Nonkululego Ngwenya. I'm a child from this region, so I already feel at home in South Africa. I'm from the African Union Commission in the directorate responsible for women, gender, and young people. Now, I have been asked to specifically speak about the African Women's Decade on Financial and Economic Inclusion. But before I do that, I just want to tell everyone in the room today, I think we've got two types of people in the room today. We've got Africans. Can I see the Africans? It's time to celebrate being African, but can I also see the partners, the people, the friends of Africa? Yes, we love you. Thank you very much. I just have one message for all of us in the room today. I want to say that the way the continent is structured currently, on the continent right now, at least 70%, almost 75% of the population is less than 35 years old. So that means it's children and young people. By the way, surprise, surprise, 35 years is the age limit for a youth on the continent. So if you're 35, you're a youth in Africa. And I know every time we say this, people get really, especially from the other continents, they get really, really surprised. So 75% of the population currently on the continent is people who identify as either youth or children. What that means is that we have a very youthful population, and we know what it is with children. Children are in transition to be young people. But what is also interesting is that about 55% of the overall population on the continent currently as females. So what that means as we speak right now is that 85% of the population on the continent, you are either a young person or you're a woman. So I'm saying all of this to say that when we program as partners, as Africans, when we program where we are, we should remember that we are programming for a population that is young, but also that is female. We have more of these young people. So and the majority of them is young women. So we're programming for young women on the continent. This is important and food for thought. And I also want to remind you that Agenda 2063, which is the blueprint for development on the continent, has one of its aspirations saying that
We want a continent that is people-driven. So when we speak about people, we speak about the majority, which is these young women or these young people. So whatever we do in our corners as governments, as partners, as Africans, as duty bearers, as young people ourselves, we need to understand that we have to do what we need to do to make sure that these people, this population group can actually take their rightful place and drive the continent. Now to what I actually came here for. I want to, first of all, or thirdly, thank the government of South Africa and apparently the DG specifically for always being on our back and reminding us of the position that we should take, but also for the long-standing position at being the forefront of continental and global movement for gender equality and inclusive growth through its leadership. I mean, we work with a lot of the member states, but I just want to specifically applaud the government of South Africa for its leadership within the African Union. It's been very catalytic, and it has very catalytic national policies, and also really has stood up for specifically issues on gender and human youth empowerment. South Africa placing women's economic empowerment at the center of its G20 presidency also reflects a legacy of principled leadership and a reaffirmation of its enduring commitment to addressing systemic inequalities. And I also know, and we all know, that this is not new terrain for South Africa. It is a continuation of its role as a convener and advocate for transformation and up to the present G20 presidency. We truly appreciate the journey that we are on and the commitments that we bring into this global conversation. It is essential to reflect on the foundational frameworks that have shaped Africa's vision for gender equality. In 2010, was it 2010 when the World Cup was in South Africa? Yes. So around that same time when there was so much noise around the World Cup, the African Union also launched its first Women's Decade. It focused on grassroots approach to accelerate gender equality and women's empowerment. And it yielded significant progress in political participation, access to education, and infrastructure. But it also told us something. It revealed where some of the barriers were, and it pointed us to persistent barriers to women's full financial and economic inclusion, and that directly influenced the next decade. So 10 years after the World Cup in South Africa, in 2020, the Assembly of the African Union Heads of State, which is the 55 heads of state for the continent, they declared the year 2020 to 2030 the African Women's Decade on Financial and Economic Inclusion. This landmark initiative was championed under His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa's leadership during South Africa's chairship of the AU. This is where I stop and expect a round of applause, because this is really pointing to why we're here today, because we have to tell South Africa that after you spend so much time, and just to tell you, it's a tug of your war when one president sits amongst the 55 and says, this is the issue I want us to focus on for the next 10 years. So South Africa did that through the president at the time, and that gave birth to our decade on financial and economic inclusion. Thank you. So I explained it better this time. The declaration was grounded in the collective voices of women of the continent, from rural cooperatives and informal traders to regional and continental gender networks. African women raised a clear and resolute call, not only for recognition, but for structural, measurable change. Our leadership listened and responded, translating this call into a political commitment and with an actionable continental roadmap. The AWD is African Women's Decade. It's the AWD on FAI, African Women's Decade on Financial and Economic Inclusion. And this roadmap
is here to ensure that African women, regardless of geography, ability, or status, can access, participate, and thrive within financial and economic system. The Decades framework focuses on systemic barriers and defines 4 interconnected drivers for women's financial and economic inclusion. 1, a gender-responsive policy and regulatory environment. 2, inclusive and gender-sensitive financial infrastructure. 3, digital financial services and access to innovation. 4, realized rights where inclusion becomes a lived reality. We monitor these 4 pillars through the African Women's Financial and Economic Inclusion Index based on the concept of transforming access, agency, and power, an approach that identifies that no one is left behind. Completing this framework is the Women and Youth Financial and Economic Inclusion Initiative, and I think my sister Cindy already spoke about it. The African Union has come up with this initiative as a partnership framework that aims to unlock transformative financing, strengthen entrepreneurial ecosystems, and support member states in developing inclusive policy environments. It brings together the public, the private, development partners to increase income, expand access to financial services, and drive gender and youth responsive economic reforms. Since the adoption of the AWD-FAI, the launch of its roadmap and the Wi-Fi initiative in 2022, our efforts have been directed towards translating policy into practice. And I think this becomes very important, like the African Union Commission, where our job and our mandate sits specifically at the policy level. So more and more, we are asking ourselves that the policies do not translate to impact to the lives of people. So how do we make sure that we embody the 3 Ps, make sure that policies lead us into transformative partnerships that will transform the lives of women and young people on the ground? These are some of the things that we have done, and I think this is what South Africa has asked us to tell all of you, some of the things that have happened. We've worked deliberately to mobilize resources, forge alliances, and ensure that women and youth themselves are central to every solution, with the backing of high-level AU champions and through ongoing engagement with the private sector, DFIs, civil society, and knowledge partners. We have laid a foundation for durable impact. Initiatives such as financial literacy courses, the Youth in Trade and Innovation Challenge, the Wi-Fi cohort, which is a cohort of young people in the creative sector, entrepreneurs in the creative sector, and the landscape analysis on women and youth financial inclusion are tangible examples of implementation in action. These efforts, supported through strategic partnerships with AU organs and institutions, UN agencies, private sector, women and youth-focused organizations, have significantly strengthened our technical capacity and operational foundation. Nonetheless, we also recognize the disparities. There's still a lot that needs to be done. Implementation has progressed, but at varying speeds along the way, and we still have some challenges. And this is why I want to come here and say, we recognize that 5 years into the implementation of the decade, we still have a lot to do, and there's still some challenges and some gaps in the way that things are done. We are still can see that at the country level, national plans overlook women's financial inclusion, and it is where the scale and impact is. We still have, as a continent, insufficient access and use of digital financial tools and platforms. There's still persistent data gaps, particularly gender disaggregated and impact-driven evidence. We still, as a continent, are faced with cultural and structural norms that hinder women's leadership and agency. We still are experiencing, there is reporting fatigue because we are giving them a lot to report on, including the UN putting pressure on them on reporting. And this is why we are developing an AU Gender Observatory, an online knowledge management platform that will ease data collection and enhance transparency and allow us to compile and analyze progress, extract best practices, and provide evidence-based feedback. Most importantly, we are starting a midterm review itself. This will allow us to conduct a meaningful and consolidated review based on country-owned data and to ensure our member states are not burdened by overlapping requests. We are finalizing the Women and Youth Economic and Financial Inclusion Monitoring and Accountability Framework, which is a complementary mechanism to ensure integrity in program delivery, consistency in monitoring and adapting and learning. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, reaching a consensus on a mechanism and financing processes at the continental level is not a simple task. However, we understand that acceleration is not just necessary, it is urgent. As we meet today, it is clear that knowledge exchange, coordinated action, and shared resolve must guide the road ahead. Once again, we thank South Africa for its continued leadership and reaffirm the Africa Union's readiness to work in close partnership with all partners, with all Africans who are here today and who are concerned about the financial and economic inclusion of its women, of its young people, for a future that is just, inclusive, and sustainable. I thank you very much.
Thank you. The aim was not to blow our horn. It was not, but somewhere, somehow, we ended up saying what we've done. Thank you very much to the AU. But this is about accountability. I think we meet always, we go everywhere and come up with the policies and all those. We need to account. We need to tell the public and the communities and everybody how far we are. It's a good 10-year plan. It can be good, but whether it has outcomes or not, it's a different story. First of all, I would like to thank all of you. You've been sitting here because some 9 o'clock were already here. Some arrived at 8:30, and you sat patiently. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, from the bottom of the heart of the minister, from the bottom of the heart of the premier and all the leadership, the deputy minister and everyone here. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We've tried our level best, but sometimes, you know, when you deal with security, there's nothing you can do. But we thank you. So lunch is at 14 hours. We have two options. Take 10 minutes body break. I saw people going out, taking tea and whatever. People can take tea and come back with tea so that we can push the time, and then we'll break for lunch at 14 hours. Is it okay? Thank you so much. Jerusalem, do we have Jerusalem? You should have played Jerusalem that time when we were waiting. It's an international song. It's an international song. Meanwhile, others are going to take coffee and whatever, others will shake themselves. Thank you very much. Let's come back at 22:01. Lunch will be at 14 hours. We apologize. And those that will be presenting, we apologize that we're going to push you to shorten the time. If you had 20 minutes, take 15 minutes. If you had, 10, 7, so that we can be able to push. And the minister is rushing to cabinet. She'll be leaving us. So thank you very much. She had to make sure that she comes here, but she was not supposed to have come. Minister, thank you. After. Thank you very much. Jerusalem. Hey.
Jerusalem, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze.